What happens when a cop with a power complex meets a woman who is superior to him in every important way? It all started Wednesday night, just after 11 a.m., a time when the streets of Talladega, Ohio, are mostly empty. Only a few workers were heading home, or someone like Lieutenant Colonel Adrienne Wallace, who was driving through the city. She had just finished a meeting at a base 2 hours south. Adrienne was in her black work SUV with small tinted windows. Nothing special, just a clean, simple, and quiet car, just like her. She had been driving for some time, quietly drinking to the sound of the tires on the road. Her thoughts were already at home. She did not exceed the speed limit, did not change lanes abruptly, and did not break the rules. But Sergeant Daniel Mercer saw the situation differently. He stood parked near Renaud's Road, sipping warm coffee and scrolling through his phone out of boredom. His shift was quiet, no calls or incidents. Suddenly, an unfamiliar car drove past. He threw down the cup and turned on the flashing lights. Before Adrienne could react, the patrol car was behind her. She calmly slowed down and stopped, controlling the situation as her training had taught her. The patrol car door slammed shut, and in the mirror she saw a tall man walking toward her, one hand on his holster and a flashlight in the other. He didn't go to the passenger side, but went straight to her window. "Driver's license and registration," he said without greeting. Adrienne kept her hands where he could see them and rolled down the window halfway. "Officer, may I ask why I was stopped?" she asked. Mercer shone the flashlight on her face. "You were drifting out of your lane. You weren't signaling, and it looked like you might have been drinking." She raised an eyebrow. "I didn't drink?" "Driver's license and registration," he repeated louder. Adrienne didn't argue, slowly took the documents out of the glove compartment and handed them over. "This is a government vehicle. I am a federal employee," she added. Mercer glanced at her ID. "1A?" "Yes," he chuckled. "This doesn't mean you are above the law." "I never said that." Her voice became firmer. "Get out of the car." Adrienne blinked. "Sorry, I said get out of the car. I will conduct a sobriety test." Her jaw clenched, but she remained calm. "On what basis?" "I cooperated. I didn't drink. I would like to know the reason." Mercer approached. "Now you refuse to obey a lawful order." Adrienne didn't flinch. "I asked for an explanation. He didn't like it. He himself opened the door abruptly. Get out of the car now." Then she quietly turned on the camera on her phone and pressed record. "To be clear," she said, "this conversation is being recorded." Glazarcera looked at the phone for the first time. A look of doubt crossed his face, but he didn't back down. "Come out now." Adrienne came out, standing straight, not aggressively, but firmly. She didn't scream or resist, but her confidence was obvious, even in civilian clothes. Mercer studied her carefully for the first time. A small voice in his head whispered, "Who am I dealing with?" But pride was louder. He made her walk in a straight line under the streetlights as if she were a drunk driver on a weekend night. She went through it perfectly, without any hesitation, without any slurring, without any hesitation. However, he gave her a ticket for failure to maintain lane. Adrienne took the paper without a word, just with a look, then got into the car and drove away. But Mercer couldn't have imagined that this fine would end up in court and change everything. Sergeant Daniel Mercer's side. Mercer is no stranger. 15 years of service have hardened him. He faced street fights, accidents, and earned such a reputation that newcomers froze at his appearance. He liked it this way, not asking questions, but giving orders. For him, the badge meant control and the final say. It doesn't matter if it was a cheeky teenager or a driver asking too many questions. Mercer never gave up or apologized. At his station, they knew he was a cop who did his paperwork, showed up on time, and never hesitated. But they also knew he had a sharp tongue and a quick temper. No one dared to confront him until that night came. At the station, he barely mentioned the stop, simply registering a fine, failure to maintain a lane, possible intoxication without arrest, and tossing the video camera to charge. The recording lay untouched for 2 days. Meanwhile, Mercer was joking about it in the break room. "Some woman was trying to show me who's boss," he told Officer Diaz. "Showed me her ID. Like that should scare me." Diaz frowned. "Wait, she's military." Mercer shrugged. Her name was Euless, Adrian Euless. Diaz's face changed. "Lieutenant Colonel Euless. She spoke at the academy last year. She's not just military, she's high-ranking, runs logistics in Fort Wayne, has a Bronze Star and 2 combat deployments. She's a serious person." Mercer waved it off. "I don't care who she is. On the road, I'm the law." But something about Diaz's tone stuck in his head, a small hint of respect. Still, Mercer didn't check the record or think about the ticket. In his head, it was all over. Adrian's course of action. Adrian isn't one to make a fuss for no reason. She's not dramatic, non-confrontational. 22 years of service, 2 combat tours, and in so many dangerous situations, she didn't have time for petty squabbles. But this was different, because she wasn't just thinking about herself. She was thinking about every young soldier she mentored, every civilian she saw in an unfair situation, every woman, especially every black woman, who was forced to keep quiet to avoid trouble. And she wasn't going to stay silent. The next morning she sat in her office at Fort Wayne, tired from lack of sleep, not from anger, although she was, but from replaying that stop over and over in her head, the way he'd spoken to her, the way his hand hung near his gun, the way he'd tried to provoke her. She knew how badly things could have ended if she'd lost her temper. Her assistant, Sergeant Daniels, knocked on the door. "It's okay, ma'am. I'm handling it," Adrian replied, closing the door. "I saw the video. Would you like me to call a military lawyer? It's already done," she said. Daniels hesitated. "Are you sure you want to do this publicly?" Adrien leaned back. "I'm not looking for drama. I'm looking for responsibility." And she spoke seriously. She has spent her career leading with discipline and integrity. Her title is not just a title. She has earned it. She commanded convoys in war zones, organized disaster relief, and managed soldiers and supplies on 4 continents. But to Mercer, she was just another driver who was too slow to obey, and that was what irritated her most. How easy was it for him? She called military lawyers, the probation officer, attached a video, filed a complaint, and let the facts speak for themselves. By the end of the week, Mercer's name was at the center of the investigation. The department's lawyers were notified, and Adrien continued to work and remain silent. But behind the scenes, she was prepared. Her lawyer said the stop wasn't just rude. It could have violated federal regulations, and they would take it to court if necessary. Adrienne didn't hesitate. She was ready. Mercer's calculation. Mercer still thought it would pass until he received the envelope. A simple, thin, manila-colored folder with his name printed on the front. He tore it up in the parking lot, waiting for another work letter. But it was a court summons, civil lawsuit. Bearer, Lieutenant Colonel Adrian Wallace. Accusation, illegal detention, intimidation, abuse of power. Mercer stood looking at the paper, then walked away, laughing loudly. "No, it can't be," he muttered. This won't hold up. But when he returned to the station, the atmosphere had changed. His superior, Officer Ridden, called him into his office. The door closed. The blinds were drawn. Ridden began. "We need to talk." Mercer sat with his arms crossed. "What about that woman from the other night?" "She's acting like a victim," Ridden said without a smile. "She's not pretending. Do you even know who she is?" "I don't care who she is. She was stopped. She was rude. Now she is upset." Ryden leaned forward. "She's not just someone. She is a high-ranking officer, a war veteran. Her track record is impeccable. She has powerful friends, and she recorded everything on video, from her side and from yours." Mercer shrugged. "And what? We'll just give in and apologize because she has a title." "No, those are for me," they answered him. "But we can't pretend nothing happened. You're going to court, and if it gets out, and it will, it's going to blow everything up." However, Mercer remained stubborn. "She wasn't even arrested. I didn't lay a hand on her. I followed the rules." "You were tense, Dan," they told him. "You just made things worse. You treated her like a criminal without knowing who she was." Mercer pressed his lips together, for the first time unable to come up with a witty retort. The summons stated that the court hearing was scheduled for 3 weeks. By that time, rumors had spread throughout the department. Quiet conversations in the locker rooms, strange looks in the hallways. No one told Mercer to his face, but he felt the change. He was no longer a tough guy. Now he was considered weak, and others saw it. At the same time, at her base, Adrian prepared differently. She didn't scream at the media or ask for sympathy. She met with lawyers privately. They watched the recordings over and over again. She wrote down every detail of what happened, was calm, collected, but determined. Her lawyer, Delaney Price, sat across from her and asked, "Are you sure you want to go to court? This is public, and it will stay with you." Adrian nodded. "Okay, let it be so." Price paused. Most would just give up. "I've ignored too much already," Adrian said. "It's not just about me. She didn't want money. She needed proof that power does not give the right to do whatever one wants. Silence is not the only choice." She fought not only for herself, but for everyone who had ever been disrespected, ignored, or oppressed by those who hid behind their power. When the day of judgment came, she did not enter quietly. She arrived in full military uniform with awards and insignia. Her title was visible to everyone. She wanted the jury to see her as more than just a woman in a car that night, but as a person who served her country, followed the rules, and expected justice in return. Mercer was already seated when she entered. He turned, saw the form, and for the first time, his complacency wavered. But the real tests have not yet begun. The courtroom was full, not by journalists yet, but by officers from both the local police station and the Fort Wayne military base. Adrian's soldiers sat quietly, in uniform or business attire, next to ordinary people who did not fully understand the matter. To some, it looked like a routine traffic stop gone wrong. For Adrian, it was a turning point in something bigger that had been building for years. Mercer sat right at the defense table. His face was inscrutable, but tense. His lawyer, Charles Brenner, whispered something to him, but Mercer didn't react, continuing to look at the judge. Then they called Adrian. She straightened up, adjusted her collar, and confidently approached the witness stand with the same firmness with which she commanded troops in danger. She did not hurry or hesitate. Everyone in the room looked at her. Her medals glittered and her saka commanded respect, not because of its form, but because of what it had earned. The judge cleared his throat. "Colonel Ulysses, thank you for your service. You can begin." Delaney Price stepped forward. "Lieutenant Colonel, please describe the night of January 17th. Adrian spoke clearly. "I was returning from a meeting with the Indiana National Guard Reserve around 11:15 p.m. when Officer Mercer stopped me. I didn't change lanes abruptly. I wasn't drunk. I cooperated and asked the usual questions, but he responded angrily. Her voice remained calm, just facts, no emotion. He ordered them to get out of the car without giving any reasons. When I asked, he repeated it louder. Then I started recording. DeLay didn't nod. "Have you ever refused to follow a direct order?" "No." "Did you resist?" "No." They said to him, "Who are you?" "Yes." I said that I work for the government and drive a government car. Silence reigned in the hall. No whisper, no movement, only the sound of writing pens. Then they showed a video. First, a recording from Adrian's phone, clear and convincing. Then there was the body camera footage of Mercer, which showed his harsh tone, his menacing demeanor, his hand on his gun, despite her cooperation, which the jury didn't need to hear. Their opinions changed before our eyes. Mercer's lawyer, Brenner, spoke next, trying to sound polite but firm. Lieutenant Colonel Ulyss. Perhaps Officer Mercer was just doing his job. Adrian didn't hesitate. "No, I couldn't. He might have been worried about safety. I was driving normally. I was sober. I didn't pose a threat to anyone. There was no danger." "Then why did you record the stop? Experience has taught me that silence does not guarantee safety. I needed proof of what happened." Brenner nodded slowly. "So you don't think officers should use their judgment when making stops?" Adrian looked him straight in the eyes. "I believe that judgment must be accompanied by self-control. A badge is not a license to do whatever you want, but an obligation." Even the judge fell silent for a moment. It was Mercer's turn. He didn't testify, but simply watched as the video played over and over again. Every harsh word, every look, every attitude he had towards her, as if she were worthless. The prosecutor asked, "Sergeant Mercer, why did you order her out of the car?" Mercer tensed. She seemed suspicious. "She didn't obey you?" She asked questions. "This is illegal." Mercer hesitated. "No." "Did she yell or threaten you?" "No." "Then why escalate the situation?" There was no response. "Sergeant Mercer, did you know she was a lieutenant colonel?" Then, "No." "What if you knew?" Mercer's voice dropped. "Perhaps I would have done things differently." Silence reigned in the hall. It wasn't exactly an apology, but the truth that came out that night. The mayor did not see the man. He saw someone who was too slow to obey, who did not behave the way he wanted. Now that her rank was visible and the entire court was watching, everyone realized. But the trial was not over yet. The jury had to decide what punishment was fair. 3 days later, they made their decision. The courthouse was quieter, without uniforms, without extra officers. Just Adrian, her lawyer, and a few curious onlookers. Mercer sat with his lawyer, trying to keep a straight face, but his jaw was clenched slightly. Judge Cynthia Morales looked around the courtroom. In the case of Ulyss versus Mercer. The jury finds in favor of the plaintiff. Mercer moved. Adrian did not move. The court rules that Sergeant Mercer violated constitutional rights during the illegal stop. His actions did not comply with department regulations and basic professional standards. Nobody applauded or gasped, only heavy silence. As justice is served, Mercer's lawyer approached and muttered, "We'll appeal." But even he seemed unsure. The judge continued, "No criminal charges will be filed, but the victim is owed $35,000 in compensation. This decision will remain on the public record forever, and will also be forwarded to the Ministry of Justice and the tailed police for review and policy changes. Adrian didn't smile or look happy, but she didn't show any joy. She only nodded slightly, not to the judge and the jury, but to herself. She did what she planned. After the trial, Mercer stood outside the courthouse, pacing the steps. A few local reporters showed up, a small crowd, but enough for him to lower his head and hide his face behind a folder. The cameras flashed. He remained silent, made no comment, and simply drove away in his car. Inside, Adrian paused in the hallway, checked her phone, and saw a message. "You win. Case dismissed." Her lawyer caught up with her. "You could have asked for more money." Adrian shook her head. It wasn't about the money. Delaney looked at her carefully. "Do you think that will change anything?" Adrian looked at the glass doors and replied, "I'm not sure, but maybe next time he pulls someone over, he'll think twice." A week later, Mercer was suspended while the police reviewed the case. Some whispered that he might be transferred. Others said his career was over. Either way, the protection he had before was shattered, and everyone could see it. At Fort Whiney, Adrian returned to her job as if nothing had happened. She didn't want to look like a hero or give interviews. She had jobs to do, people to train, missions to accomplish, and responsibilities to fulfill. But on her team, the lesson was clear. You don't always have to yell to earn respect. You don't always have to fall apart to prove you've been wronged. Sometimes calm speaks louder than anger. Even with the court ruling in her favor, Adrian knew the battle wasn't over, because accountability isn't just about the punishment. It's about what happens afterward. 2 months later, Adrian stood before a hall of recruits at Fort Wine. Most of them had only been in uniform for a few weeks. Young, enthusiastic, ready to serve. She hadn't come to discuss battle plans or supplies. This time, she spoke about leadership, about what it means to be a leader when no one is watching. She looked around the room and asked, "How many of you think that wearing a uniform automatically makes people respect you?" Several hands went up, some hesitantly, some firmly. She nodded. "I understand why you think that. But here's the reality. Respect is not given. It is deserved by every action, every choice." She gave it time to absorb the words. "It's the same with power," she continued. "A badge, a rank, a power. It's not armor, it's a burden. If you can't wear it with honor, you don't deserve it." In the back row, a young soldier sat up straight and listened intently. Adrienne paused, then added, "When the officer stopped me and forgot my duties, I could have screamed, I could have frozen, I could have ignored it." She looked them in the eye, but I didn't. I wrote it down. I reported it. I went to court and told the truth. There was a long silence. That officer thought his badge made him untouchable until he saw my rank not only on the uniform, but in the way I stood my ground. That's the difference. That's what true leadership is. The room was silent, not from boredom, but from understanding. Adrienne closed the folder and looked up. Lead with integrity. Serve with honor. And remember, you don't just wear a uniform. You represent everyone who ever wore it, and all who will wear it. She stepped down from the podium not for praise or gratitude, but because her message had been conveyed. Let this be a lesson. Power without responsibility. Just a mask of fear. Speak up. Stand firm when you see injustice. Do not turn away, for silence helps the perpetrators, and courage protects everyone.